days after the February earthquake. And we thought that Oliver died, and you'll understand why when you see some of the other photos we've got, but she didn't die. She went to ground for 3 days, as cats do, and I spent quite a bit of time wondering, as I was walking around the remains of my house, how long it would take before I could smell a dead cat under all the bricks. And so we were terribly excited when Olive came home, and that's about 10 minutes after she appeared home. She disappeared up into the hills where we lived, and that's her. So it's kind of a photo that is a reminder of her resilience, I suppose. So this thing that you're doing is on resilience. What I've done is I've got a piece of paper that you, it's like a little light room. I need something like that.
I want to write it in my book. Can we just check?
Okay, so that's Olive. So she's fine and well, but she's right at this moment she's in a cattery. She's a bit grumpy about that. She's okay. Now I just have to go and find some other photos for a second. I'm on the internet, aren't I? Yep. So on the February earthquake, as we were all sitting out there, and everything seemed to be fine here at school, I was out there with all the students, and I'd been in the car park, and the first that I kind of realised that something wasn't too good was that while I was out in the car park out there ferrying parents to pick up students over here, one of the police came in. And he said, oh, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, we're all fine. I said, the school's fine. All the students are out here on the grass, as you all were. And he said, oh, good. He said, where's the principal? And at that stage it was Mrs. Welsh. And I said, no, she's out there. Everything's okay. We're fine. And he said, great. He said, look, I just wanted to see that you're all right. I've got to go. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, everything all right? And he just looked at me, ashen-faced and white, and said, no. He said, the city's a mess, and he said there are multiple deaths. And that was the first that any of us here at school knew. I was kind of the first one, and so I was quite shocked at that. And so I came back out here and told Mrs. Welsh and a few other people. And that was actually the first that we knew that there was a problem. And so I thought, oh, that's okay. It's nothing to do with me. Here we are, we're all at school, we're all safe. I couldn't get hold of one of my children, but I wasn't too concerned about that, and I thought, oh, it's terrible, I guess we'll hear. And when he said multiple deaths, I thought, maybe 10, but of course later on we heard there was a lot more. So we're out here, and I couldn't get hold of one of my kids, and so I rang my friend in Wellington on a normal phone who works at the correspondence school, and the normal phones worked, as you know, all your cell phones got all locked up, and I rang one of my friends, and she managed to get hold of my daughter because she could sit in her office in Wellington and watch the internet and was telling us what was going on. So I was over in my office doing that and relaying information out here. By about 3 o'clock it became really obvious that the eastern suburbs, that is right around the east, right around the sea, were badly hit by the earthquake. And so the teachers who lived in the eastern suburbs, of which I'm one, were told that we could go home. Well, that was a major mission, because being a bit of a twit about filling up my car with petrol, I didn't have very much in there, and I thought, oh my God, I better go and get some petrol. Well, it took me about an hour to find a petrol station. I had to go right down the end of Lincoln Road to find a petrol station. And I live in Mount Pleasant. Now, if you don't know where Mount Pleasant is, if you've ever been to Sumner, you come around the estuary, and just before you get onto the causeway, going across to the causeway that goes across, I live in the hills up above there. And so I thought, okay, so I got my petrol. By this stage it must have been about 4:30, I suppose. I found out that my kids were okay, so that was my main issue. And I knew they are fletching the university students, they're not a huge amount older than you. One's at that stage, one was 19, one was 21. And I knew that they would make their way home, so I thought, well, whatever happens, they'll probably be at home. So it took me about 3 hours to get home, and the closer that I got to the eastern suburbs, the worse everything what became. The streets became really bad, we couldn't go down Ferry Road, there was gridlocks of cars everywhere, there were holes in the road, there were cars down in the holes, and I thought, oh God. So I had to go right round, you may not know, but the Heathcote Valley, which is near the tunnel going into Littleton. We had to go right round that way, so we go right across the city, right round the hills, and it took 3 hours to do it. And as we got round there, you know, people were there was a lot of people crying. It was just horrible, really. But I didn't sort of think too much. I thought, oh, yeah, okay. And so finally, I got sort of through the valley and going round into Mount Pleasant and up the hill. And I'd gone up a different part of the hill to what I normally go up because I had to come down through the back. And I came down my road, which is Major Holbrook Road, and I could see my house, and it looked absolutely fine. So it was the back of the house. It's a brick house, a big old brick house. It was built in the 1950s. And it looked fine, and I heaved a huge sigh of relief and thought, great. However, I drove up the driveway, and this is what I saw.
Oh wow.
This one. Any of these really? And that's what I saw, the bricks, the house had pretty much collapsed. Here is a conservatory, and I'll show you another one of that in a minute, but most of the bricks have come off the top of the house that are just because the spur where we live, it's sort of like a hill like that, and the earthquake had come down through that spur, and the house has been lifted up and smashed back down, and then like in a washing machine. And so an old house like that, for the old house like that, it just fell to pieces. And that was the first I knew, so I got home about 6 o'clock, by which time it was pretty cold, and there was the remains of my house and my kids sitting on the ground crying, both of them, how old they were. So there we were, sitting there, this part of the house here, which is the dining room and the kitchen. Pardon?
Did you go inside?
We did, yeah. After we did, but that part there, which is sort of the kitchen, the garage is under there, so it's the garage and basement and stuff. This is the lounge room, and this is the dining room and the kitchen sort of behind there. Well, that sort of an add-on, I guess, was added on some years ago. That had pretty much completely separated from the rest of the house. Normally, when you go into this house, you go in through the conservatory. And you go, I'll see if I can find a good one of the conservatory, because I spend a lot of time in the conservatory, and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when this happened, if I'd been in the conservatory or anywhere near my house, I wouldn't be standing here today. This line that you can see here, the front door is there, so you go up the stairs, there, round into the deck, and then into the conservatory and the front door. This line here is the roof of the conservatory, and it's a piece of concrete about that big. So if I'd been in the lounge room and this had happened, and I don't know what I would have done now, I know what I'd do, I'd never go outside, but if I'd gone anywhere near the conservatory or the deck or outside the house, I would have been killed. I would have, if I'd been in the hallway, sort of at the back of the house, the hallway that runs down the middle of the house, I'd have been fine, but I would have been killed. You can see the damage that it's done to the house all of a sudden, so you can imagine what the kitchen looked like. Everything was broken. The microwave that had been in a piece of wall, something like that, plugged in, had unplugged itself and shot from one side of the room to the other. Everything that could break had broken, all the dishes had fallen out of the cupboards. The only dishes that were okay were a few that were in the dishwasher. Everything else had broken. So it was very difficult. We weren't sure whether we should go inside or not, because the hills were still incredibly unstable and shaking every moment. So the kids and I sort of stood there in a state of shock, and the neighbours were all round, and similar things had happened to their house, but there were only about 3 of us whose houses had completely blown apart, mine of which was one. Of course, we looked for the cat, and we couldn't find her. And the back of the house, where she probably would have got out, I can just kind of show you around the back of the house where there were just everywhere all the bricks had fallen off. So we thought that she was under the rubble somewhere. We thought that she was kind of under the rubble, and there was just piles and piles of bricks everywhere. So that was what we went home to. So we suddenly had to think about how do we deal with this, and because I'm someone who thinks, well, I've got to deal with this quickly, the way that I dealt with it was to go into complete overdrive. And so I went inside and got enough things that I could get, and went and stayed with a friend. But I guess what you do is you think, okay, what have I got to do? Well, I did. What have I got to do? So over the next 2 or 3 days, I found a lock-up. We then had to think about how we could get any furniture that was salvageable out. And of course, the soft furnishings like your couches, your beds, they were pretty much okay. And that was about all that was okay. I had to keep it together because of the kids. I couldn't get too emotional and upset because I've got two young people who were reliant on me and looking to me for their support for them, because they had lost their home. Even though they're students and living, as you will, away from home, that's their home, that's where they grow up, and that is their home. So they were pretty shattered about what had happened, and waiting for me to have a mental meltdown, I think. What did I do practically? My neighbours and I got together and we got lock-ups in the Heathcote Valley for our stuff. We worked out how we were going to get all our stuff out. What it did do in the Mount Pleasant, and still has in the Mount Pleasant area, because Mount Pleasant is pretty decimated. It's called the forgotten suburb at the moment. I'll explain to you why that is. We all got together, and it was a time of a very surreal time. Some of us didn't even know each other. I didn't even know the people across the road. They're an elderly couple, and I didn't know them. And now, every time I go up there, I go and see them. The people behind me, we are very close friends. They haven't got any family here. They're also quite elderly. And so my son and my daughter and their flatmates and students from the university, they all came out and helped. And we worked out how the only way that we could get the stuff out of the house was like this. I think what it has done, it has made us as a community very close, and that I think that once we all go back to where we are, that will. Oh wow! So that's the lounge window, and that's really the only way that we could get any of the big things out. They had to come out through. We smashed the rest of that glass out, and they had to all come out down through there. So you can imagine there's no way that I could have done this myself. No. So I had to rely big time on other people to help me. All the time there's a lot of shakes carrying on. All the time we had helicopters that were really low over the. I'd have to say that the police were fantastic. Every day the police would come up, and the Red Cross, and someone, not every day, but someone from EQC, are you okay? What can we do? Is there anything we need? The police were fantastic, because one of the things that happened that was pretty horrible was that pretty much straight away, when I say straight away, after about 2 or 3 days, the looting began. And if ever I catch any of those so-and-so lowlifes, I'll be extremely violent.
They wrecked on your house?
Well, not so much everyone's. They would go through. And over a period of time, we got stuff out quite quickly. We were some of the first people to get the stuff out. My cousin came up from Oamaru, my friends came from Palmerston North, our holidaying in Nelson. They came down, and the other people that's a neighbour, that's my son, and the flatmates. And they got you, and Mr. McMurtry came with a big van from school, and we just loaded everything. We had a convoy of about 12 cars that went back through the valley to the lockup and got rid of the stuff that we could. But there was a lot of junk that I just left. I couldn't even begin to think about it, and it was a lot of stuff was ruined because inside the house is a great big hot water cylinder. Well, that fell off its thing, and there was water all through the house. And it's just a mess. So there was a lot of junk, and so in the basement down here, the water had come down and was just horrible. And every time we went back after about the next 2 or 3 weeks, I had a bag of old clothes that I was going to chuck out, and I just left them there. And I knew that looters had been in there because I put the clothes back in the bag, and every time I went into the garage, the bag had been tipped out again. And so they were in there just picking through what they could get. And to me, that's just one of the most unbelievable downsides of the humanity around Christchurch at the time. It was just pits. And that's still going on. But, there's nothing much left to take now. They could have had what they liked, I didn't care. But it was just the fact that they were really trading in other people's misery. Really upset us. Okay, so when this change happened, what did you do to cope? What actions? Well, I went into overdrive. I did everything I needed to do immediately. Technically, we were not allowed in the house. EQC wouldn't go in the house. They considered it too dangerous. And the police would come in, and the army came up one day and they said to me, "You're not going in there, are you?" And I said, "No." But I was. And so they put a big red sticker, they red stickered it. And it sat there like that for quite a long time. So the systems of support, as I say, the police were fantastic. They were really, really good and supportive. And once they found that what was happening to the people in the hill suburb of Mount Pleasant, they put roadblocks at the bottom of the hill, and it only led residents and people who were going to a particular house up the hill. So there you go. What else? What were my personal traits? Well, I think I'm a fairly tough person. I have been through a few other incidents, as everybody does, as they go through their lives, and you have to cope. And I think that you've just got to get on with it, Just got to get on with it. So I do. One of the things that's happened to me right now is, so we did that, got all that stuff out. I stayed with friends, and then there was the issue, of course, of where was I going to live, and I didn't know really. And other people, you say about people who help. Well, Phil over here, who is the grounds person for the dog, I don't really know him very well, but he lent me his camper van for a week. He brought his camper van up the hill, which is no mean feat, let me tell you. The roads the way they were at the time. Parked it at the neighbours behind, and the cat and I moved into the camper van for a couple of weeks. But I didn't want to live in a camper van for the next year or so, so I had to go about finding a flat. Miss BJ is down here. She lives in a thing where there are 4 townhouses, and she knew that one of them was empty, so rang the landlord and managed to get that. And that's where I am, where I was until last week, when they EQC said they wanted to paint them, so the cat and I had to move out for a month. So she's in a cattery, and I'm with friends right now, which I suppose is one of the hardest things, because suddenly you found somewhere to live, you've got to uproot yourself again, which is a bit of pain. When I look back on it, what is the best thing about this experience? It's interesting. Well, I'm going to get a new house. My house is now completely down. It took some time for them to demolish it, because it's actually quite a big house and lots of concrete. This concrete here is about that thick, so it wasn't an easy job to demolish it. And in the process of that, one of the demolition crew's great big huge trucks hit my car. Oh. And what could you do? I just sort of stood there and laughed, really. And I said, there's this huge map, the guys that do the demolition are quite sort of tough. And this is a huge, great big guy. He's Polynesian or Maori. Tats. Huge, and he's got a real anger problem, because the neighbours were going to call the police one day when he was having a fight with somebody out the road. And his name's Bear, which will give you an idea about it. And Bear, one day Bear was having a hissy fit about the fact that we had to halt the demolition because some measuring had to be done about where the house was on the section, and I went up there and Bear was screaming and yelling and effing and blinding, and the young guys that were working with him, who were just young Irish guys, they were terrified. They were sitting there quietly, and I said, "Bear, it's fine, just calm down." So I went and bought him morning tea, so after that he thought that I was the best thing since sliced bread. However, when he hit the car, he was in this massive truck, and you've seen those great big massive trucks that bring all the rubble down. and he didn't hit it badly, but he did hit it, and I didn't actually realise. I was standing there watching him beating it, and he hit the car. And he was sitting in the cab, and he was bashing his head against the steering wheel and screaming and yelling. And I thought, what's he done? And one of the young Irish guys said, "Oh, miss," he said, "I think he's hit your car." He said, "I think it's time to go home." I sort of thought, oh God. Eventually he got out of the cab and came storming across the road. Oh, and I'm really sorry, I hit your car. I said, "Bear, it's fine. Just it's not somebody else's car. That's the really good thing. It's my car." So anyway, they had paid me. But it was just another thing that happened. I just thought, oh, yeah. So finally they've taken the house down, and it is now an empty section. And the plans for a new house, a lot of people said to me, "Do you want to, why would you go and build in Mount Pleasant, when so many houses are decimated and so many houses are gone?" Because the one thing that has affected me the most is not necessarily the loss of my house, this is really important, it's the loss of my lifestyle. Mount Pleasant is my lifestyle. I live in Mount Pleasant because I choose to live in Mount Pleasant. I get up every morning and I look out to the sea. In the weekends I walk along the beach or I walk in the valley. And it's the loss of my lifestyle that I've mourned so much. The house really, it was a lovely sunny warm house, and it was a great house for kids, and the kids grew up there, and they every day they walked down to the sea in the holidays, and it is a fantastic place to live. And until then, people would have been really envious of the fact that we lived in, be it an old house, it's not a flash expensive house, but it's the lifestyle that I've lost, and it's the lifestyle that I struggle with even now, and I want to go back to. So, often it's not the bricks and the mortar or the things, it's what you can't touch that you miss most. And I've got a lot of friends out there. I'm staying out there at the moment, out at Redcliffs, and it's really nice to get up and smell the sea and be in that area again. And I will go back there. So that's what I want to do. There's nothing wrong with my land. I'm not in an area where there's a cliff, as you've probably seen on TV, or if you've been out there with some of the houses falling down. I've got quite a relatively flat section. I've got no big rocks or anything coming down, so I'm able to build on my land, and it's not a problem. What is the biggest thing I've learned from this experience? Well, you've just got to get on with it. You've just got to get on with it. You can't sort of curl up and have a massive breakdown about it, because you've still got to deal with the problem afterwards. The problem won't go away. I can't do anything about the earthquakes. The earthquakes as such don't really affect me. They do with other people. I know some people are very stressed out about the actual shaking of the earthquake, whereas I just think, oh, there's another earthquake. That doesn't bother me. It's all the other stuff I have to deal with that sort of is harder. So you just got to get on with it. You just got to go with the flow and get on with it. The other thing is that I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. I can't be bothered worrying about little things I can't change. I worry about the big things. And I'm not very good at coping with whinges, I have to say. When people whinge about things, I think, oh, for God's sake, get on with it. So I'm not terribly patient with that sort of behaviour anymore. What's the best thing? Well, the best thing will be a new house, of course. So the systems, I guess one thing is that Mount Pleasant as a community has put in now a lot of systems for people to cope. They have a lot of meetings, they're having one tonight, but they're having a lot of meetings, they're getting people together of different insurance companies who are having problems to talk through their issues so that they can help each other. They're doing a lot as a community. My children and I were given, and we're going there tonight, a $100 voucher to have dinner at a local restaurant. So we're going to go there tonight and do that. But yeah, I've met lots of people in my community that I didn't know, and that I will keep in touch with, I guess. I feel awful about the fact that I didn't know them, Here they were kind of living next door or across the road, and I didn't know them. But everyone has mucked in together. On the days where we were up there packing all our stuff up, every day on the day days that we were up there picking all our stuff up, some people would bring up some food, and we had a little camp stove, and we'd bring up flasks of hot coffee, and we'd sit round, all the neighbours would sit round and have a lunch, because it was nice weather, if you remember, it was February, so everyone would sit round about, it was 12, 1 o'clock, as they were finishing packing up stuff, and they'd sit round and we'd all have lunch together. And it was lovely. So there you go, and if you'll see that it, when they were going to demolish it, it was a bit of a, they didn't get it done very quickly, and I was really scared that the roof, or the engineer actually, not me, but the engineer, was really scared that the roof might fly off and in a high wind and crash down on some properties below me. So that was one of the things I used to get the house down fairly quickly. You can see that it's quite a slope. That's my children. It was actually last week. I have to show you. Because even though you know, all these things happened, people do carry on.
What's that?
It's the hat of my daughter. She got capped last week.
Did she graduate?
She graduated last week. So even though, you know, even though these things happen, you get on with it. I don't know what's doing. Even though these things happen, you just get on with it, and that's what they did. In university, one of the interesting things was that the people who stayed at Canterbury and got through that year, their marks were higher and better than they had been in other years. So some people did leave, so it might have been skewed a bit by the fact that some of the people did leave, but they it's not going to do it.
Like where it says 100 down the bottom.
By the down arrow.
By the what?
Down arrow. Bottom right corner. It says like 100%. Like,
Make it smaller.
yeah.
Yeah, so all this had happened to them, that they managed to do well.
Welsh.
That's Andrew, and he's there, so there she goes. That's her.
Nice ankles.
The interesting thing about her is that she was doing geography, and she got a degree in geography. It's nothing to do with my house, but anyway. And she then she decided at the beginning of this year, quite against my wishes, to go to college of education, become a secondary teacher, and she's now in section at Shooty Boys. So there you go. So yeah, people carry on, and things, you just carry on really. So what will happen now? Well, hopefully this house will be built, and we'll be back in Mount Pleasant in the not too distant future. They reckon it's in being priced, and the final things are being done at the moment, and they seem to think that it will be ready to go, or ready to start being built in about 3 months' time. So technically, by beginning of school next year, we should, if everything is right, be back in our house, and I'll show you a picture of the design of the new house. So yeah, so everything has a silver lining. You know, there are a lot of bad things happen, but you've just got to get through them. You've got to be resilient. And I think that Christchurch has taught that to a lot of young people. You've got to be resilient, because at the end of the day, no one is going to stand there and look after you forever. They stand there and look after you, and they stand by your side, and they help you, and they do all those things for a while. But people have got to get on with their own lives, and you've got to, you've really got to pull your own socks up to get yourself where you need to be. Is that what you wanted to know?
That's fantastic.
Ask me some questions.
Yeah. Any questions? Remember, this is your opportunity.
Yep.
I finished the sentence. Life is good.
My life is a good example of resilience, because I'm not going to look backward. I will always look ahead. I guess is what you can say there. will always look ahead. And you can't look, you know, I can't keep dwelling on what's happened here. It's happened. Down here somewhere. There's So when you have to build another house, when you've got to build another house, there's a huge hurdle to jump through, and I'm still jumping through lots of hurdles to do with it. I have to build a house that's no bigger unless I want to pay more money. The insurance company, I had a total replacement policy, and when I took out that policy however many hundreds of years ago, I wouldn't have taken a lot of notice of that. I wouldn't have taken a lot of notice that my insurance policy paid for my accommodation up to $25,000. I wouldn't have even remembered that, I don't think. But, and would never have thought that I'd needed it. Because my mother never needed it, my grandfather never needed it, you know, those generations have never needed it, but suddenly I did. And I was so pleased I had it. So the insurance company will, I've had an architect design my house. Can't be any bigger, but I can change it around a bit inside, change the area around, which we've done. And we'll have a brand new house. So that's what I have to look ahead at the moment.
Are you building on the exact same area?
Yep, exact same place. For some reason I just can't here. Yeah, we are. And we'll go back, and our neighbours are already keen to see us. It's not going to come up, I don't think so. But it's similar because it has to be quite similar because of the view. The view out there, which is the sea, and look down on the causeway going across to Sumner and the sea. Yeah, so there it is. It's not I'm not sure. That's the front of it. That's the garage and everything down as it was, and that's the side. That's kind of like where the window was, where the furniture was being pulled out. So it's similar.
Are you still going to use brick, or are you changing to wood?
I don't think anyone on the hill would use brick. And the insurance companies are okay about that. I mean, they've got to insure it, so why would they put brick up there? So yes, it's all good, but it's still quite a long way to go yet because it's still the negotiation. I'm not very good at that, Melina.
Have you had anyone that's quite good with legal knowledge helping you out, or have you had to sort of stumble through that yourself?
I have got some friends who are lawyers, but one of the things, you know, it's a bit tricky. You've got to be careful that you don't kind of use your friends too much, because if something isn't quite right or something happens, then it's embarrassing, you know. And it's a bit like that with David at the moment. He's my architect. He's an old friend of mine. I've known him since your age, actually. Grew up with him, and he really wanted to do it. I wasn't that keen on him doing it for that reason. And you know, we're coming to a bit of a tricky situation now where who does the project management? Well, it's not going to be him. I have to tell him that, you know, and so it's a bit tricky. So, but then the other side of that is that I went and got the insurance company to look through my documents, just to look through my documents and to give me any ideas, and it's really just a 2-page letter that they did, and they charged me $3,200 just to do that. And I thought, and this is another thing that when you about resilience, is that you've just got to look after yourself. And I thought, no, it's too much. It's too much money. I'm not paying that. And so I didn't pay it. Eventually, the young lawyer who had been given the job to do rang me up, and she said, "Oh, I've just noticed that you haven't paid your bill." And I said, "No, Sophie, I haven't paid my bill." And there was silence on the end of the phone, and she said, "Oh, is there a problem?" And I said, "Well, I think that's too much." I didn't yell and scream, I just said, "I'm sorry, I think it's too much." So she said, "Oh," and I said, "Well, you know, I gave you a lot of information, you didn't have to do anything else, you didn't have to negotiate with anyone, you just had to go through it. And I said, that's exorbitant. So she said, oh, okay, well, I'll go away and talk to my supervisors. Well, suddenly, about a week later, it was reduced by $1,000. And I thought, well, why didn't they just take that $1,000 off before? So, in your dealings with people, and I have to deal with a lot of people now, getting aggressive and abusive is the wrong way to go. They'll just go. And the insurance company, if I don't, I've got to remember that the insurance company at the moment are my best friends. I mightn't particularly like them, and I mightn't particularly like what they're doing. But if I don't work and negotiate peacefully and nicely with them, they will just put me to the back of the queue. Because a lot of other people in my situation, and I don't want that. I want to be at the front of the queue. So therefore, I have to learn to negotiate, and I have to learn to be pleasant and polite and nice, but firm, and try and get my own way through negotiation. And it's a really important skill to learn and have, and I'm not great. Oh, I'm getting better. I suppose I am okay, but I'm getting better. So yeah, so that's me.
If someone you knew was going to experience the same thing, what would you tell them to happen?
What would I tell them to do? I'd tell them to look after themselves. I think that's a big thing. I've taken probably, because I'm not paying my mortgage and rent at the moment, I've got a little bit more free cash, and I probably should be saving it, but I haven't. I've spent it. And I've done things like I've gone away on holidays a bit more than I normally would. I've left Christchurch, not because I don't want to stay here, but I've just I've gone to Sydney last year. Last holidays I go to Queenstown. I go away quite a lot. And I probably go out for dinner a bit more than I normally would. I spend a bit more money at the moment than I normally would on nice things to do. So you've got to look after yourself. I think that's really important. And look after those close to you, because they are the most important. But also to carry on as normal, you know? Don't change your life too much, because you've got to, still got to work. I've still got to work. I've still got to earn money. I've still got to get up every day and come and try and mark work and get Dion to do his English and lots of things. I've still got to do that every day. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling, you know. And I've had my bad times. You know, sometimes at night when I thought, oh, this is just too big. And you know, I had bad times. But yeah, you just got to look after yourself. Yep, who else put their hand up? Sam, did you get your hand up?
You said that, you still have to pay your mortgage off even though your house has been demolished.
Well, not really, because what happens is that when your house is a write-off, then you get that $100,000 from EQC. So that's gone in at the moment to pay my mortgage. When my house starts to be rebuilt, that'll have to come back out again and go into the pool of money to rebuild my house. And at some point I'll have to restart the mortgage. And so then I won't have so much free money. Plus my accommodation money, which is paying my full rent at the moment, will run out in October. And so I won't have that, so it will be, that's why I should have been saving my money, but I haven't. But having said that, all the I also got about a lot of money for all my stuff that was broken, I can't remember how much, and I haven't spent any of that, apart from buying myself a new TV and a new barbecue. I haven't spent anything else. Those are the only two things I bought, big things. Because, well, I'm in a little flat anyway, there's no point, I've got no room to put anything. So I'm paying for a lock-up where all my other stuff is. I will have to start paying my rent, or half of it. The government will pay half. And I have to pay out of my insurance money for my contents, things like carpet and curtains, and I don't know how much that will be, so I'm not spending any of that money, but I'm probably spending too much of the money I make to look after myself at the moment.
Do you still have to pay rates?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, yes. My rates were reduced by 40%. When I got my rates bill about a month or so ago, and I didn't pay it, and I took a photo of the section, which is this pure earth, and I sent it in with, because when you pay rates, you pay so much for the land, you pay so much for the house, which is called improvements to the land. So I sent this photo in with my rates bill, and I said, could you explain to me what the improvements to my land are, please? and they sent me back a letter. So it said that the rates would be re-looked at in July, and from then on for a while I won't have to pay rates on the house. But yeah, it's every July. Didn't like that much. So yes, I do. It's, but 40% less.
Any last questions?
There are only two teachers, two of us that went through that, Mr. Smith and I are the ones who lost our houses at this stage. There are other people who may, but at that stage we were the only two that lost ours. But there are other people who had to move out. It was like a bomb, really. There you go.
That's awesome. So thank you so much